to lighten you up, make you laugh, and get you off your ass. Now that's Kristen being Kristen. Are you freaking kidding me? Start the show.
What's up, everyone? Thank you for joining me. It is Chicken in the Bag Podcast. I am Kristen Hutchison, also known as Kristen being Kristen. If you're struggling with pain, physically, mentally, emotionally, or you have some fears and you want to overcome them, then boy, do I have the show for you today. Today, I'm going to be talking to Stephanie Moniuk from Knockout Wellness. She's a good friend of mine, so I'm going to get her in here, and we are going to get this show started. Let's see. I do this right. I don't know if that one do. Let me add this stream. Hello, Stephanie. How are you? Oh. Wait.
Nope.
Oh. Can you hear you? Okay, can I hear you now?
Okay, yeah.
All right, sir. Whoa, boy, technical difficulties with Kristen today. Hello, everybody. What's going on, Stephanie? How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited to chat with you. To give people at home or listening a little backstory, I met you over a year ago during my IG Live. I had you on, and I had you on to talk about your whole, your health and wellness. So let's tell everybody who you are. You're a wellness coach, but you're also a painkiller, right? That's how I consider you.
I like it.
You like that? Okay,
yeah.
So Stephanie, you had degenerative back problems. You went on your own journey to heal yourself. You now have your own practice where you heal people with cupping techniques, and you also deal with the emotional trauma that sometimes locks people in that pain cycle that we're in. Can we talk a little bit about your early years, how you found out with the back, what started your back problems, and how did you get on this journey?
Yeah, sure. So I started having back problems when I was in high school, and I sort of just chalked it up. I was, pretty active, played basketball and stuff. And I was like, oh, it's just that. And then they would come and go. And then probably when I was maybe 22, 23, I just had like a major episode. Like my back is out, I'm on the floor, pretty major. And that ended up happening a couple of times. And I went to see a chiro who recommended an MRI. So then when the results came back, they were like, oh, look at this. You've got degenerative disc disease, spinal stenosis, herniated discs. And that, my spine was much older basically than I was. So that was sort of what I got. And, maybe surgery, maybe not really sure. So time goes on. I had, several flares, had gone for a consultation. At that time, it was determined, that no, you don't really meet the requirements because this is degenerative.
Mm-hmm.
We could fix it, and then it's just going to sort of come back.
Wow.
So I was really like, oh my God, I really, want this to happen. And I kind of felt like it was the only answer. Kind of went off on my own path, and then started thinking about, other alternative methods. And I ended up watching a video with a doctor who was doing like manual techniques on people. Like it looked like medical, but sort of hands-on like massage. And it turns out it was Dr. Ben Benjamin from Cambridge, Mass. And he had a school where it was more of like a medical massage approach. So I was like, I think I want to do this. I want to be able to work with people and help with people, other people with these issues. So it sort of was happening at the same time. So I did end up having a surgery where they had to go in and extract a piece of disc that came loose. It was like free floating in my spine. So you obviously have to, do that. There was no way to leave that in there. So again, like I said, those kind of cycles were still coming through. It was hopeful that maybe that might rectify it. It wasn't. And once I started in massage school, I was really hell bent on I want to work with people with pain. I want to figure out what is going on with this? How can people feel better? There has to be other options. And then just to jump back real quick, because this is pretty timely. This was in the early 90s. And
right.
They were, here's some Vicodin, a barrel, sure. And I was like, what is this? I had no idea what it was. Opioids were not on the news, was not knew about. And, so I was taking this prescription, and all of a sudden I was like, gee, my knee, I was getting pain in my body, other places where I didn't even have it. This is really weird. And I don't really think I should kind of be taking this. So that was obviously really concerning. And then now, of course, looking back then, I'm like, crap, you had no idea how badly that could have turned out.
Correct.
Could have turned into. So, now I'm in massage school, just hell bent on learning, there's got to be other ways, and stumbled across Lorimer Moseley, who's a researcher out of Australia. He has a TEDx talk called Why We Hurt. And I definitely recommend everyone to check it out. It's very cool. He's very funny. And he talks about sort of what I've become obsessed with, which is how the mind and the body interact together to generate pain. And that oftentimes that pain signals happen, in the absence of actual damage. And that's where I think we all get trapped.
Yeah, I think that's so fascinating, because I think so many people don't realize the connection. You know what I mean? I know that we have physical pain and we have emotional pain, but then sometimes when you do have a back problem or other things, I think somehow like maybe your brain kind of trains itself and then it's really connected to that. Yeah. So I think it's unbelievable that, first of all, that you recognize that the medication wasn't the right path for you at a young age, because if you look back now, what's done to so many people in society, that pain and surgery or medication like cycle that people are on really hurt a lot of people's lives. So I commend you first for trying to find another path, because I think that's how sometimes it happens for us. Yeah. I think sometimes our journey happens because something happens in our life and we go, how do we fix this? Or how do I want to understand this? So I think that I love how you approached it and what you learned and then what you did with it. So as you kind of got into saying, okay, I want to you started fixing yourself and you started wanting to fix other people. What did you learn? Like, what is cupping? Can you explain cupping to people that are at home and how it helps the body?
Yeah. So cupping I use actually more for my acute pain clients, not chronic pain. So that's like, I work with a lot of athletes. That's for like, an injury, something that, usually something that's more recent. But what's neat about cupping is that it works really fast, it's non-invasive, and that it really just separates those layers of tissue that tend to get kind of stuck together, separates the fascia from the muscle, brings in good blood supply. There are a million claims that people make about cupping, but the very basic, nature of it, that's really, the thing that it does.
Okay.
And that's what makes it so great, is that, you've got an area that's injured, you're not really using it, everything that's going to kind of stagnant, that gets everything, moving. And then you're able to kind of work on, mobility, moving the muscle around, because that like tend to sort of freeze up. So it sort of, it helps with that, and that people are then able to move it quicker. And usually, like with anything, like the quicker you're able to get back to your regular activities, the better off you're going to be, the faster you're going to heal.
Especially with athletes, because they have their training schedules, or physical activity is like what they base their life off of. So they need to kind of get those muscles working again, or that pain out of like that shoulder or that lower back if they're tweaked or whatever. Now with the acute pain, like the people that have long-term pain, what are some of the things that you do in that technique with your healing that helps with the mind and the long-term pain? Can you talk about that?
I do education, a lot of mind-body education. And what surprised me, I think, is that so much of it has been around for a really long time. And in all the time I was, looking for answers, it never came up. It was never mentioned to me. And it wasn't like a secret, because Dr. John Sarno, who's like kind of the father of like mind-body medicine as it relates to back pain. He was around, doing this work in like the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, all the way up. He passed away maybe 10 years ago, I forget. But regardless, like I never even heard of him until after I largely recovered. And I'm like, how come nobody brought this guy to my attention? Like where was the information? Where is
it? How come? What do you think, Stephanie?
Money. There's no money. There's no money in saying work on your head and your body's going to feel better. The money's cut. The money's when you drug, that's where the money is.
And I think that's really fascinating too, because I think that's what we don't talk about. I mean, there's a lot of talk of mental health and mind, body, and spirit, right? But a lot of times, like we don't really have like the training for it, or it's still really looked down upon. Like if you seek a different type of medical practice, a lot of times people are like, oh, that's hoity-toity, or that's hokey, or are you sure that's accredited? It's so funny how people's brains are trained to think that this is the only right way to do it. But then when you go and look at the people that have had back pain and been on this cycle of hell, and not even to the point that they can even get out of bed in the morning, or even go up and down stairs, or live a life. Like if you're a parent, you know what I mean? And you take care of a family, and you're a mom, and you have like, I had a friend that went through like botched back surgery after back surgery. When I heard her story, I'm like, I don't even understand how you even got out of bed in the morning with toddlers, and it's fascinating. But then we have these other techniques that could be helping people. And you have to really go out and take the time to get on the computer and really search to find a Stephanie that can help you at Knockout Wellness. So I think that's great that you, Stephanie, were you a business person? When you grew up as a little girl, how did you decide that you were going to still open your own?
I always wanted. I always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit when it came to things. Though I feel like I always wanted to like have my own thing. Like for a while, I was going to be a witch, and I had this like witchcraft book, and I was like booking appointments with the neighborhood kids, and my mother found the book and she took it away from me. It was one of those,
house, Stephanie.
Right? I mean, I grew up in super Catholic household, and I was like, oh, that looks intriguing, because at the time I remember, remember the book fairs, right? The best day of the school year. Right. And I got this little book that was like stars, spells, secrets, and sorcery, and I was like obsessed with it. And I'm like, oh, you could really do that. So I did you take the penny, and then they send you the book in the mail. So anyway, they found the book. So my I'm gonna be a witch. That was done.
And that entrepreneurial spirit again.
Not so much. But I always felt like, I remember, there was a while, I've always dabbled in the arts. Like I was gonna have a business and make things and sell them and do mosaic. There's always been something that's just I've always been pulled towards it. I think it's just more about figuring out what's viable and makes sense that still is something you're really going to want to do every day.
Nice. And so then when you started training and learning this, and then you just decided to open your own, did you work for another practice before you went out on your own?
No, I went on my own right off the bat. Yeah.
I love that, Stephanie. Yeah. I think that's so great. What do you think? What is something that you love about coaching? What do you love about the wellness program that you're doing with people? Is it helping people heal, or is it just watching the process? What are some of the things that you love about it?
I like the idea that I feel like what I bring to the table is that I can convey something that's complex in a way that's easily digestible for people. And when people say to me things like, oh, wow, I understood that, I heard about that, but I didn't really quite understand how it works. That's the thing that really gets me excited, because that's always what I'm trying to do, because I feel like so many things that people, when you're in that journey of trying to feel better, whether it's mentally or physically or spiritually, you're looking things up, and a lot of it just gets thrown around, just information, just do this or just do that, or it's mindfulness, and people are I don't even know what that means.
Right.
Okay, I need to do more mindfulness. You get these buzzwords. People don't know how to implement it, and that's where I get excited when I'm able to break something down and be like, here's what you need to do. I want to treat it you're an exercise routine, you're getting ready for the 4th of July, right? So if you were going to be doing that, there are activities that you would be doing with your body, right, in preparation for bathing suit season and beach time,
right?
The same kind of thing. People will say boundaries. I know you didn't bring it up, but that was one of the things I work on is I just need to have better boundaries. You don't just arbitrarily decide I just need my back to feel better. I just need to, and then just think that it's going to happen. You have to actually have some sort of plan and something sort of spelled out in order to, to get you where you want to go.
I think that's great too. And I think also if you can kind of give it to people in layman's terms, and maybe your direct approach or your communication style probably really works for a lot of people, because a lot of times you go someplace and they throw all these words at you and you're like, I have no idea what the hell that person's talking about. But when someone says, all right, do you want this? Well, you have to do this. And they go, oh, I get it. And then then the person gets the action plan. I love the fact that you talked about boundaries, because I think a lot of people have poor boundaries. And I think that that's one of the things that really links to happiness, in my personal opinion, is knowing yourself and knowing your boundaries. How did you learn about setting boundaries? And was it something that you were good at when you were younger, or is it something that you think you developed with age?
I developed with age. It was actually part of the healing work that I did. So it's funny that, so Dr. John Sarno, again, I just mentioned him earlier, I discovered his work after I recovered, but I'm still going to read. I still want to know what this is all about. And it's interesting. He has a theory about people who suffer from what he calls tension myoneural or myositis, depending upon who you ask, syndrome, TMS. And you can find Facebook groups. And it's really about kind of a grassroots community of using these mind-body principles to try to heal themselves, because you can go work with a coach, someone can help you along the way, but this is work that you need to do. But anyway, he wrote in his book that, there are people that he believes, certain personality types, that are just prone to this, and he calls them goodists.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
There's so many people. Yeah, there's so many people that suffer with that.
Goodists are people pleasers. They tend to have poor boundaries. They put other people, before themselves. They probably tend towards a little bit of maybe like martyrdom. But essentially what they're and not only are they doing that, but they're also in the process when you're attending and organizing yourself around other people's lives, what happens to your own emotional state? It gets completely suppressed. Right. So you're, both suppressing things that are very uncomfortable that you don't like because you want everything to be nice and everyone to be happy. And then in the meantime, you're tending to everyone else's needs and not your own. So he believes that was kind of like, it becomes like a powder keg, basically. So, you can only push, like pushing a beach ball, right? You're holding a beach ball underwater. There's only so long you can hold it underwater.
Right.
And all that crap gathers, and eventually it's going to pop. And when it does, it will manifest itself as some sort of pain in the body. Like, because that's your brain's way of saying, like, hello, I'm trying to get your attention here and you're ignoring me. And now I'm going to make it so that you don't have a choice. How's that back pain feel? Right.
Wow. I think that's really crazy, because I never thought of it sometimes like that, because, I always know that, like, I think we hold on to pain too, right? Because in order to get rid of pain, emotional pain, it's really painful to get rid of it. Right. So that's like why a lot of people like make that connection. Or also I think with a lot of like, groupings or categorizations, we actually become the pain, right? That becomes our persona, right? So like especially if you get involved with a group and that's what you relate to yourself, right? Well, then if you let go of it, then what are you going to be? Because you know what I mean? So I think it's really interesting if you really deep, when you take a deep dive into that aspect, like how do you make that change and how do you let go of that? And how do you become the next version of yourself? Because that's part of the journey. We go through different phases, just like you might mature as you get older, or maybe as a woman, you become a little bit more outspoken as you get older because now you know who the hell you are and you're not going to take any shit. I think that's part of the whole process. So if we hold on to previous things and let that become who we are, then we're really preventing ourselves from being the best version of ourselves or actually healing. And I think that's so fast. I would think that people want to heal themselves, but I think there's such a connection to it that they don't know how to like let go.
Right. Well, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear around letting go of things that you identify with. It's comfort. And your brain, just from an evolutionary perspective, hasn't, we still have that reptilian brain that's like constantly scanning for danger. Mm-hmm. Where's the danger? Where's the danger? And there are people out there, and people, whether they're, highly, their nervous system runs high, whether they, really identify as being, empathic, or someone who's had trauma, your nervous system is always turned, you're just like, So eventually, what happened, like all that stuff is coming in like it's dangerous. So it's really hard to realize, like,
process it.
New isn't dangerous. Your brain thinks it's new. So therefore, it wants to try to stop you. And I tell people, like, when you feel that, that's really a go sign.
Yeah.
That's how like, because your brain's like, oh my God, that's, because that's the thing that's going to be that's a real next step. That's really taking whatever that thing is going to be. The more you like respond to it in that way, the more likely it is you probably need to do it. If it makes you a little bit sick, that you're on the right track, unfortunately.
I think that's funny that you say that, because I think there's two things I want to touch on. So that's kind of like you're talking about trauma brain, right? Fear mode, right?
Yeah.
Kind of those. Okay. So a lot of people get into fear mode. I feel like fear, I think you and I have a very similar opinion when it comes to fear. Mm-hmm. I always say fear can either holds most people back, or I feel like it can be almost like a firecracker under you that like pushes you forward. And that's how I use it for myself. And I think there was something that I read on your page. I think you said something like fear. I think you said something about fear and fight. And I wish I wrote it down, but you said something about you think fear means is when you're supposed to like fight or something like that. I think that's how it kind of you live. So how did you make that connection in your head that fear is one that's to push you forward instead of hold you back? How did you make that connection for yourself?
I think it was probably when it was I was really trying to understand. Once I decided to start fighting, that's kind of when it came about, in that I had a lot of fear, really about having anxiety when I was going to fight. So because, I have a diagnosis of PTSD and an anxiety disorder, which can, kind of just crop up at inopportune times, right? So I was like, I really don't want it happening then. There has to be something I can do to sort of, work through this. So I had the idea, because this is a technique that's used that I learned from Laura Mosley relating back to physical pain, is that, sometimes one of the techniques they use is it's called graded exposure. So ideally, if you have someone that has like back pain, they can't go, run 10 miles, what can they do? And sometimes it even starts with just watching videos of other people moving their backs. And then, because it still triggers the same neurons in the brain as if you're doing it. And then you're like imagining yourself doing those, and then you're looking in the mirror, and then you're doing approximations, and you're working your way up to the closer approximation of the exercise.
Wow, that's how that's the process that gets somebody like when they're stuck in that mode. It's almost like if you're afraid of an escalator, you might look at the escalator, and then eventually maybe you'll just like put your foot on the top step and then step back off, and then eventually get on it. Wow, I never thought of it, because you really could just break it down by steps, because really like that thing, there's almost like a fear/phobia to it. So once you can kind of like break it down that, I can do this, then you learn how to do it.
And it's just like turning that exposure just a little bit up each time. And so what happened was I was like, all right, so I can sort of, I've been doing this with my back, like in terms of like my training. It's like, okay, well, today I'm going to do this. And then, next week I would sort of set these goals about like how much I could, like certain positions would bother my back, that kind of thing. So I had that part figured out, but I was trying to figure out more of like the, emotional part or my mental piece. So I started just doing like my own like guided like mental imagery, where I was like picturing myself like I had my ring song in my head, and then I was picturing myself walking out, and then I would start, because my stomach already as soon as I can still do it now, I can conjure it up. So I would picture myself like walking into the ring, like getting under the rope, the whole thing, and allowing that fear to rise up in me, because I don't have anything to be afraid of, because I know I'm in control, and I'm just imagining this.
I love this. So I want to explain this to people that are listening or watching. So what we're talking about here is Miss Stephanie over here. Not only did she overcome like degenerative back pain and trauma, like to learn how to like heal her body, but she also overcame fear in her own personal life and decided to get into a boxing ring, which you're such a badass, because I'm obsessed with boxing, and like you are like my spirit lady, because I would love to get in the boxing ring. So okay, so you're 40, Stephanie. You decided to go into boxing. Did you always have a love for it? What made you do that?
I saw Layla Ali fight on TV, and I was like, I can do that.
I love that.
It wasn't like I want to do it. I mean, that was really what it was more like. I can do that. Like, just like I can do that. And then I actually like, so I had taken some like martial arts class and was kind of fooling around then, and kept saying I wanted to compete, and didn't really, and I never taken like a pure, like straight, boxing class. And then I moved to Lowell, and my dad and I were going to the Golden Gloves, and then I'd see the women fight. And I'm like, same thing. I'd be like in there going, I could do that. And then I finally said, like, I'm going to do it. And then by that time I found out like I'm too old to even fight in the Golden Gloves by that point in time. And then it was like, oh, you have to be in the Masters division. So I was like 46 at the time. Started training like right at 45, and then had my first fight at 46.
I love that. I think that's so cool, Steph, because I love you so that I could do that, because I had a conversation with somebody the other day about how there's so many people out here in society that always tell us what we can't do. Right? Yeah. Nobody wants to tell anybody what they can do. They always, but they're right there to tell you what you can't do. They have more than enough opinions when it comes to that topic. And you're like, what do you, and most of the people that are telling you what you can't do are the people that are pretty much stuck in that trauma brain or that fear mode, right? They're afraid to make that opportunity, or take the opportunity, or fail, or take that chance. So they just want to stop you. But you're like, yo, don't push your fear on me. I'm going to go for it. So I think you and I are similar in that fact that we figure like, I can do that. And in our 40s, I think we both took a chance on different things. You got in the actual ring to like fight people and like fist fight them. And I actually got into like the ring of like comedy, where you kind of use your mouth to fight people, or like, or share your thoughts and feelings. And I love how you were talking about the visualization, because I think I'm going to try that, because I know I totally connect you on that. Like when you're about to go on stage, like you almost get like that, you can throw up, or you get like that butterfly in your chest. And I love how you said you picture yourself going under the rope and all that. So I think that's great, because people have to learn, take control of that feeling.
Yes.
Don't let it hold you back and not go. Have those butterflies and that feeling, be like, I should try this. This might be my greatest growth, or this should be what I need to try, because it might be the big thing for me.
Yeah. And the better you get at controlling that, you can control it in other circumstances.
Right.
You know, you get nervous about, and then you're like, what am I, and then you can calm yourself down. It's like, I like to tell people, it's like, everyone has a nervous system.
Yes.
But all of our nervous systems are different. That's why I kind of balk when it's like, well, you need to do yoga. That's not for everybody.
Everybody.
A lot of people, but it's not. It may not work for someone else, So, and I don't mean to pick on yoga, but like there tends to be like a hand, like you need to meditate. That's not for everybody either. But I think it is incumbent upon all of us to like learn how our nervous system operates. As a human, here's what we need to do. Like you learn how your nervous system operates, learn what makes it feel better, learn what makes it feel worse, and figure out how to drive it. Like it's like driving, you got a license to drive your car, you learn how to drive your car. It's the same thing. And it's way more important than learning how to drive a car.
Yeah. You think? I think 100%. I love that you say that, because we have such a problem in society of like a one size fits all for this. It's like a one size fits all for education or this or woman or that. And I'm like, it doesn't. And I always say when I listen to these people that are super driven, and I know everybody, yes, does their growth mindset or their way to be more productive, or if you're an entrepreneur, how to make those goals come to realization. I get it. Most of the times I'm like, I get up and I journal and I time block my day. But to somebody with a certain nervous system, that would seem so overwhelming and be like, I don't even know where to start. It would make you just want to quit before you even start. So I love the fact that you say everybody has a nervous system. Yes, everybody, you have a nervous system. Some people are anxiety ridden. That's okay. Anxiety is just like, if you learn to control it, hopefully the more you understand it, you can learn how to control it instead of it control you. And I think that's one of the greatest things that I wish we did a little bit more proactive for people, instead of just naming it and then just saying, well, that's just what it's going to be. Well, it's like, well, why is that where we stop? Why can't we go a little deeper? Why can't we understand what that trigger is? And why can't I learn how to breathe through that, or how to understand it, or how to control it, and then find a way to overcome it? You know what I mean? So I wish that we went a little bit deeper, and I think that's what's great about you. So anybody that is listening that's inspired by any of this, or you're dealing with back pain, or you're dealing with some type of blockage or this trauma that you really feel like you're in mud stuck over and over again, you can always just email this lady or check out her page and see if she can help you get a little bit over that hump.
Yeah. It's funny that you just said that about, because that's exactly how I feel when it says about saying about it's anxiety or it's trauma or it's this, but then what? And I have these little epiphanies sometimes when I'm out by the river running or mostly it's been walking lately. I'm slowly but surely getting back into it. But it's like what my thought was, is that, when these you overly identify with something and then it becomes your identity, right? And I was thinking about within the context of trauma, because that's something that oftentimes gets thrown around as sort of just this big scary thing that we should be terrified of, which
but it's light.
But I thought about it and I was like, it's like, I said, what was it? Oh, trauma isn't a period, it's a comma. Trauma is a comma. That's what it was. It was a rhyming. Trauma is.
I love that stuff.
That's what it was. Trauma is a comma.
I love that.
Because it is okay, trauma, or anxiety, but then, not. That's it.
Yes, Steph, because that's my biggest problem is I'm always like, but why? I always have to understand why, and I always want to find a solution. I think that's where you and I are very connected, because we don't like to see people in pain. Right. Yes. And so for me, I try to use humor or conversation or just connecting to people and sharing thoughts and feelings as a way to maybe that can be a way that helps somebody get out of their pain. Maybe they can connect to somebody that I have on. You went into it as a business, as helping them on multiple different levels. But I think that's what the big problem is. We say it's this period. And I'm like, but then you're not helping that person get to the next level. They're stuck in that position. And I think one of the things that I love that you said that is because if you did have trauma, which most people have, whether it be physical, emotional, maybe it might have been sexual abuse as a child or a sexual assault, whatever. There's so many different levels of trauma that people as humans go through. It could have been being attacked, whatever. But if that's who you are, you're stuck in that, and what that trauma does to you internally, emotionally, and physically is going to keep your body in a state that's really not going to help you live the full life you deserve to live. So I like the fact that we're making it a comma And
Right.
then go, and then what's next? Because yes, you shouldn't have to hold on to that forever. Yes, you have to work through it. You have to feel it. You have to deal with it. But you are so much more than just that experience or just that trauma.
Right.
And I love that.
I also believe, sorry to interrupt, but I believe that when you're trying to, to work through it, I think a lot of people, because this comes up in a lot of the mind-body groups as relates to pain and that trauma, and that I've been trying to go back and feel that emotion. Sometimes I equate it to it's like a pile of crap in the toilet, right? Like, how long are you going to poke that thing with a stick? Eventually, you're going to flush it and move on. Just flush it and go. Just flush it and go. Like, this happened. It happened. Yes, it had an impact on me. Here I am today carrying, these pieces of it, but I can leave the rest of that behind.
Yeah.
And then just figure out, okay, because of that, now I have, jump if someone walks in the room behind me or, whatever. When you figure out how to deal with that from a behavioral perspective and the behavior of that in your nervous state, how to modulate your own nervous state instead of constantly poking thing, you just let it go.
No, I
agree,
because the thing is like it inhibits you from really living the life you deserve to live, and I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. And I think that I don't know, there's so many things that now are supposedly the wrong thing to say, like positivity is toxic. Telling people to move on we're probably like, so people probably think that we're awful for saying this, but that's not what we're saying. We're just saying that like we see the good. And what I really want to touch upon, especially like when I deal with people as a bartender, and I get into people will just blurt out their trauma like so openly sometimes. Like the other night I had a guy that was leaving the bar and he goes, well, I don't look people in the face because when I do, my father used to beat the shit out of me. And I was like, whoa, but that he's working through it. So people do have their trauma, and however they feel comfortable releasing it, they release it. But the thing is, I don't like people to the reason I want people to work through it and be able to let go of it sometimes is because you shouldn't punish yourself for that. And that's what I see so many people when you see like they'll constantly keep themselves in that state. They continuously keep reliving it or punish themselves. That was a phase. You might not have been the cause of it. You might just be doing the best you can to deal with what was done to you. Or maybe you hit a bump in the road and you got addicted to drugs or alcohol. Or maybe when you had a back problem, they put you on a prescription and you had a really downward spiral and you did a lot of shitty things to people in your life. But you shouldn't hold on to that for the rest of your life. That was an experience you went through. Mm-hmm. And I don't want you to ever like hold yourself back for the rest of your life because you had a bad phase. Yeah. And I think that's what we're both trying to say. And I think that's what makes me sad that we're not supposed to say that, because we're keeping people trapped. In my personal opinion, I think we're keeping people trapped sometimes. We're not letting them hail and move forward.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I think that, especially if you're doing the same thing over and over again and it's not working, screw what the experts say. You know what I mean? Like, just try something else. Try something else. It's okay.
It's okay.
We all have been conditioned. This gets back to the goodist behavior. We've all been conditioned to follow the rules and, do it like this because that's the way that it's supposed to be done. And sometimes no, sometimes no. I think you can forge your own path. It's your own life.
I totally agree with you. And I think that sometimes that we just have to kind of let people realize that, like it's your life and you're not, especially if you're a goodist or you did have certain things. I think a lot of times the people around you expect you to process it a certain way, or the way other people around you react to you sometimes. Mm-hmm. More of that. Like if you're a people pleaser, I think that's what I said about today's conversation with you. And like, there's so many reasons why it's hard for us to speak our truth, or so hard for us to acknowledge what happened or heal ourselves or take control of our lives. Because if you're a goodist, you want your parents to be happy. You want to fit in with your friends. You don't want to push people's buttons, or you don't want to be seen as like, especially if you've been a goodist and then you learn to have your voice, right? Yeah. You're going to get called like, oh, you've changed, or, oh, don't you think you're special, right? And that just means that you're just trying to heal. So if that's what the people say to you, those aren't the people to be in your life. If you're working on you, right? If those people don't encourage you to be the best version of yourself, then those people don't belong, and don't worry about them. What do you think about that stuff?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was just going to say, I saw there was something floating around, the people that get mad about you having boundaries are the ones that benefited from you having none. So yeah, that's usually, people get triggered. And that's another thing. I also, that another word that gets, tossed around quite a bit. I'm triggered. And I have a program called trigger charting, but it's really about taking personal responsibility for your triggers, not blaming someone else, which is can be unpopular sometimes.
Can we say that again? Because it's super unpopular and I fucking love it, Steph. Like, it's all about what I'm all about. Because you know why? I'm like, accountability matters. Like, name calling and pointing fingers doesn't solve the fucking problem. And that's what we don't say in society. And I'm like, okay, yes, this does trigger. This is offensive. This is mean. But I don't know. You love boxing, Rocky Balboa. We say life's not all rainbows and sunshine, right?
Right. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all responsible for ourselves, for our own nervous systems. Again, yet another reason to figure out how to get control of it. Because then once you do, you're responding instead of reacting. And that's the difference. We respond instead of reacting. When we react, it's because we're triggered and we don't know how to handle it. We don't know how to process it. But those are things that, the world is not gonna, as much as we would like it to, the world is not gonna acquiesce to, the way we want it to be.
Serious? Why aren't they?
Turns out, and you have to deal with that reality. And I'm obviously not talking about atrocities of war,
No, I get it. Every day, overly sensitive, and I think that's what you mean, Stephanie. I get it. You're talking about real life. Yeah, I get it.
Real life, and that's the reality of it. And I think that you need to be able to say, I own your trigger, not you triggered me. Right. I got, that triggered my nervous, because that's what it means. My nervous system got triggered because that looked like, brought up something in me that was reminiscent of this. That's what that is. And that, so then I look at it and go, okay, so then how do you get rid of that? You figure out how to cut that connection so that it's no longer attached to that.
Right.
It's no longer attached to it. It's I build a bubble around myself, and everyone needs to know that that I'm fragile, and you can't trigger me, because then I can't handle it. You gotta figure out a way.
I love that point of view, because it also is kind of like, I don't know, we both you grew up in Boston too, right? You're a Boston girl.
Yeah, well, Burlington, but
outside. Yeah, we both grew up in New England. I think there's something about New England growing up here is that, we maybe have a higher threshold for triggers because people just push you all the time. So you've learned to deal with it in a younger age. And I always go back to the whole saying, like, we used to say, I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say, bounce off me in 60 years. It was your way of being like, that's your trigger, but I'm not holding on to it, right? It's funny. You know what I mean?
Because we grew up, it's like trigger city. It's all
right. It's like, don't let anyone know your weakness, because they're gonna harass you, right? Exactly.
One is from Charlestown, like, give me a break, right? I mean, I get it,
Exactly. So that's one of the things I said. I also, another thing I want to talk to you about, Stephanie, like when we're talking about like the trigger and fear mode and trauma brain, neuroplasticity. It's something I'm fascinated about the brain, like the neuroplasticity of our brain. I think a lot of people don't realize that our brain can process. I learned a lot about it when my son had learning issues at a young age. I learned that you could actually train the information to go down a different pathway. If this wasn't working, you could go here. Can you talk a little bit of neuroplasticity and explain that to people at home, or what you think is interesting about it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what's great about it is it basically means that your brain can rebuild itself and rewire itself throughout the course of your life. For the longest time, scientists thought, and I don't remember what the age was, but there was a cutoff, like at which point your brain was static and fixed, and there were no changes that could be made. And that's why it's always important to continue to learn new things and work on new skills and work on activities, because it helps keep that, that neural, the pruning off of the connections that are no longer work, and the recreating of connections that do. And just by doing things that challenge you, you're going to be able to do that. And I think that it's, we talked about it right before we went on about, like, it's a lot about the difference between like the fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and that's what makes all the difference in the world. Because if you're operating with the idea that, this is me, gets back to like the comma versus the period, this is me and I'm unchangeable, and you're going to just live your life that way, like, period, this is it, then that's how your life is going to be. But if you want it to be different, it can. And keeping your brain active and involved in the process is going to get you there so much faster, because you've got to, now you've got your brain like constantly working for you, looking for new opportunities. You can teach your brain safety, as well as you can teach it fear, and like to scan for new opportunities and look for new things. So.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. Like, you're always growing and learning and changing, right? like if you were who you were at 5 years old for the rest of your life, I mean, maybe you were cool ass 5-year-old, right? But like, I'm sure you're going to grow a little bit more like in your 20s and your 30s. And I think each year you get older, like in each 10 years, like you probably learn a whole lot of the things. Like maybe you like new things, or maybe you learn like to change how you approach people or say things, or say, hey, I like to say no a little bit more than I did when I was 20, because you know why? My time is precious and I can't go to everything or be everything to everybody. So I think that people have to understand that, like, you have an opportunity. Your brain is amazing. It's an amazing tool. And you have to just kind of tap into and realize how special it is. Your body's a machine. And I don't know why people don't realize that. Like what you eat, what you do, what you put into it, what you think, how you choose to process information, that's all under your control.
And who you surround yourself with.
Right. The people in your, yes, so important. Steph, I want to read a quote of yours, and I absolutely love this quote. And I love the fact because it kind of, you know, I think boxing and life, I think there's so many sayings you could say that relate to life with boxing, right? And I love the fact that you got into it, but you said, if you have a fear, going around it is not going to make it go away. If you're in the ring, you're not going to win the fight by dancing around the perimeter. You have to engage your opponent, and you have to impose your will. That's I love that, because I think that, I don't know, maybe it's just the energy of me. Like, I just agree with like hitting things head on. And I think so many people, it's not comfortable for a lot of people. They're more of a deflector or avoider. And I'm more like, hey, what's going on? Can we talk about this? Tell me about that quote. Why did you write it? And how do you think what can people learn from that?
I mean, it's really more of an aspiration for me, because definitely, you know, my boxing style is a lot more aggressive than my personal style, right? You know, so like, as much as I know that and I understood that, I work every day to work through my fear and not go around it. So it's an ongoing process, and I want to make that, you know, extremely clear. But it is something that I learned, you know, and my coach uses the impose your will. So I kind of stole that one from that little ending piece, but that's what it's about. Right. I mean, I look at it the same way as, you know, in life, when they talk about, you know, it's just really about, you know, whose theories you're subscribing to. Like, you know, they talk about setting an intention, right? And then acting as such. It's the same kind of thing. Like, if you decide something, you know, I'm setting my intention, I want X, you can't get there by going around it, you know, because it's a little bit scary. You have to go through. It's the only way to do it. And you have to impose your will. You have to say, I want this. This is something I want to have. This is something I want to have in my life, whether it's, you know, winning this fight, or, you know, learning this new skill, or, you know, it's anything that makes you step out of your comfort zone is fair game for that. And it really, you know, I think that's the most important part, is that people will say, like, you know, and I've talked to people, you know, about this in the past, and they're like, oh, I totally want to do, you know, but I could never do that, you know. And it's like, if I could, you could, you know. It's not, you know, it's no different. It's, you know, everyone, no matter what it is. But I feel like people will just sort of look at the other person and be like, oh, they're special and I'm not. It's like, no, they're willing and you're not. I mean, that's the difference.
I love that, because they're willing and they're not special, you're willing. I think that's such a great point, because so many people, they'll look to celebrities or other people that have been successful in a thing that they want to do, and they go, oh, well, that's, you know, they're lucky, or they're special, or they had XYZ. Well, that's just your fear creating all these different reasons why they have it and you don't. So I love the fact it's like, if you want something, you have to set the intention and you have to freaking go for it. And I think that's what so many people don't realize. If you want something, it's not going to knock on your door and be like, hi, here you go, Kristen, I'm here. You have to be like, no, you have to literally go out and go get what you want. And I think that that's great. And I love the fact that you said, I could do that. And I think that that's what so many people say. When you're done listening to this show today, I want you to maybe go down and look at yourself and say, what is it that I think I can do that I never went for? Because maybe that's going to maybe open up a whole door for you of like trying new things after listening to me and Stephanie, hopefully, because we're two women in our late 40s. Well, I'm 50 now. I don't know how old you are now, Stephanie.
I just turned 50 this month.
Oh, I just turned in March. So we're both, see, listen, us two 50-year-olds are making shit happen. So you guys can do it too. There's no excuse. Steph, one more thing I'm going to ask you as we wrap up the show today. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us and sharing a lot of your knowledge. And I love the fact that you do so much to help people heal themselves and feel better, because I think that's what we all want to do. So thank you for sharing all that expertise. There's a lot of conflict in the world around us. And on your page, you shared a quote from Cheryl Richardson that I really loved. And I shared it today on my Instagram. And it said, if you avoid conflict to keep peace, you start a war inside yourself. Why did you share that? Because I think that is such a great way to kind of explain I want you to explain it, then I'm going to give you my opinion of how I think it helps in today's society.
Yeah. So actually, what I was sharing it for was really more of as a mind-body quote, in that, essentially you can only hold your emotions and things down for so long, because eventually they're going to spill out. There really is. It's the only way to do it. Is that by allowing all that stuff out, processing that stuff, talking things through. Talking through your emotions. If you're upset with someone, you don't have to hold it, and then blow up. You can say, I'm upset because of this. Again, it's about responding versus reacting. It's about step back and share, because that you're just going to end up destroying yourself by not speaking your truth, by not being honest, by not being yourself, and not being genuine.
I love that you said responding, not reaction, because I think reacting is what I think in society we're in such a reactionary mode at all times.
Yes.
And I don't really think that really benefits the psyche or the body, in my personal opinion, because I think it keeps your body in a constant state of anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anxiety and fear doesn't really do well for the body. As far as I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I may be asking you, is fear and anxiety good for your body?
Absolutely not. No, chronic, no. I mean, I like to say chronic anxiety, or really anxiety in general, but it depends upon, sometimes in your typical functioning person, a little bit of anxiety is like, oh, interesting, I might be nervous about this. That might be something I want to explore. Because I always like to say, use it as a tool. When something makes you fearful, it's usually an indication that's the direction you need to be headed. Mm-hmm. But you tend to want to go the other way. But certainly, obviously, yes, chronic, being under fear for your life, your safety chronically, and fear of, anxiety on a chronic level is definitely not good for you.
So I'm going to tell you what, I love this quote today, because I think it's such a great statement, because I think what we're doing as a society is, because we don't want to have uncomfortable conversations or conflict, we a lot of times are holding it in, and we're the ones that are really paying the price. And one of the things I love to do with the show is try to have uncomfortable conversations that we can kind of get back to the middle. And I really feel like if we could just own our own triggers, like you said earlier in the show, mm-hmm. and speak our truth, and instead of reacting, really open a dialogue or a conversation and listen to another person, maybe we could find some solutions to ourselves, instead of just being stuck in that trauma mode, or that mode that we're holding back ourselves back because of something we went through, or assuming that we're in this one category. You know what I mean? So that's what I loved about it. I thought it's such a great quote, because I think it's so important for us to really, we have to heal, and we have to feel, and we have to deal. And I really feel like in society, we're not really doing all three of those things. We'll try to say, oh, well, that's not fair, and we'll just stop it. But that's almost like stopping it, like stopping the car short and all smacking your head off the windshield, because we haven't really finished dealing with it. It's like, wait, we didn't even finish dealing with it, but now we're just going to put it aside, so it's unresolved.
Right.
That's how I kind of feel. So I don't know if you have any opinions of that.
No, it's true. And that's what they even talk about, trauma is basically, that's trauma, is that, it's something that hasn't processed, it hasn't passed through. It gets stuck in your body and stuck in your tissues. That's really what they talk about, which is, I think, where a lot of the idea of you have to dredge it up and examine all over the place sort of came from. But, getting back to that is, recognize it as such, and be like, okay, so this is where it ends, right? This is where it ends, because
this is where I take over. And I start driving the car. Yeah. Instead of yeah, exactly. I love that. Well, Stephanie, I really think that you shared a lot of really great information with us. And I just want everybody, I want to thank everybody for joining us again for another episode of Chicken in the Bag podcast. If you like anything that Stephanie's doing, you want to learn about her boxing, her wellness, her painkiller, please follow her at Knockout Wellness. And Stephanie, don't you do some coaching also on conquering fears and other stuff like that also?
I do. Yeah, I work with, and I also have a Facebook group. Actually, if you would, even in my bio, I have a link tree. So I have a Facebook group called No Boundaries. So I work with a lot of women around boundary issues. But, in the group, it's more fun and cheerleading. People will post kind of a boundary they set where that was really hard for them. And, everyone's like, yeah, so it's a ton, it's fun. It's a really supportive group. So,
well, I think that's really great too, because that's part of the whole process, right? I love that it's more of a cheerleader. And that's what I love to do. I like to cheer for people. So that's another thing. I love that you do that, because that's the whole point. Sometimes you can help people get to that next level because you're teaching them how to set the boundary. And then when you see somebody else do it, then it makes you feel, and then it starts that whole cycle.
I gotta tell you, I've literally watched it happen like right in front of me. So like I will post something and then someone will say, oh my God, like I'll get like a PM, like, oh, I was thinking about this, and I'm like, go for it, whatever. I'll give like a little extra encouragement. And then all of a sudden they're posting that they did it. And then the next person will be like, oh my God, I saw that she did it. So I just did the thing that I was worried about. And then, and then all of a sudden it is. So
I love it.
It's like a tipping point. Once they hit it, like there'll be several women that will set a boundary they've been agonizing over.
It's great.
And all of a sudden we'll talk again, and then it happens again. So it's super organic, which is great. It's not like this contrived sort of scenario. So it's fun. It's a fun.
That's awesome. Let's throw those ripples out, get things going, take action, stop thinking, start doing, and set those damn boundaries for yourself. All right. Well, hope you enjoyed hearing about Stephanie's story today. A little boxing boundaries, a little badassery, and we will see you next week with another episode. And have a great rest of your week. Cheers, and we'll talk to you soon.
This episode of Chicken in a Bag is over. She's got to get back to being a mom, wife, bartender, therapist, comedian, real life stuff. But you can catch more episodes of Kristen being Kristen on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe. Catch you next time.